All right, everybody. Can you hear us okay? Yeah, many thanks. Right. That shit up the Bitcoin 2024 conference, the biggest Bitcoin conference that ever was by some metrics. Anyway, we're here with the founders on a Lightning Standard panel. I'm joined today by three legends in the space. I'll start over here to the right. So we have Des Dickerson from Thunder Games. Thunder Games is a platform that allows you to play games and win Bitcoin for that. It's quite a good deal. We have Roy Sheinfeld from Breez. Roy is the CEO of Breez. It is a non-custodial Lightning client. They have a wallet, a Lightning wallet. They also have the Breez SDK, which we'll get into what that is in just a moment. And we have Evan from Zeus, one of the coolest Lightning wallets out there. So if you're using Lightning, consider checking out Zeus as a wallet. I want to kick things off today. A lot of you guys have probably heard the term orange pilling. Has anyone heard the term orange pilling? Hands raised. Okay. So orange pilling, right? You learn about what Bitcoin is, you get super pumped up, you want to tell everybody in your life, you want to give them the history of maybe Austrian economics, money, all of this kind of stuff. But Roy, you made a really interesting point this year in a Medium post that you put out, and also we republished at Bitcoin Magazine. You said the time for orange pilling is through and that we need to create more utility with Bitcoin, give people a better reason to use Bitcoin. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Sure. Maybe it's because it's 9 a.m., but I think orange peeling stopped working.
Fair.
And orange peeling basically ran its course. I think the basic question is, what is Bitcoin? For me, Bitcoin is peer-to-peer money.
Yeah.
And I think we can spread the gospel of Bitcoin we can spread it better through technology than we can through orange peeling. I think by definition, education doesn't scale. And instead of focusing on orange peeling, whatever that means, because orange peeling in many ways means pumping someone else's pockets, I think we need to focus on embedding Bitcoin into our day-to-day experiences.
Yeah.
We need to focus on building solutions that will ease the user experience of Bitcoin and spread Bitcoin through the means of technology, and that is actually scaling and providing actual value to people.
Yeah, I think that great points. I appreciate that. And Des, at Thunder, with what you're building, people are playing games, they're earning Bitcoin. So you have this really cool use case, play a game, get some Bitcoin. Can you tell us a little bit about how you conceptualize this and what you're seeing with adoption as per people using Thunder Games?
Yeah, I think Roy also has an interesting point, as always. I do think we've gotten to the point where orange pilling doesn't work. And we've even seen that in our games. So we started out with offering micro incentive rewards via Bitcoin in our games. So, really incentivizing people to come and stay and play in the games. And it really does work. Long-term retention typically is around 500% greater than without the Bitcoin rewards. Ad revenue increases around 65%. So it is very compelling, but it really only appeals to a certain subset of people, right? We can kind of see when we launch a new game, it's here are the Bitcoiners, here are some new people who are interested in Bitcoin. But it did feel for a while, a lot of stuff we're doing was just doing Bitcoin for the sake of doing Bitcoin and evangelizing. And as much as we love freedom money and teaching people the principles of why we all love Bitcoin, a lot of people don't care or don't have the time to care. And so I think Roy made a really good point, and which is something I think that we at Thunder became very introspective over the past year and a half, where it was okay, but are we really offering something that's so much better? Yeah, a little bit better. And that's why we've been focusing more on skill-based wagering, virtual casinos, the sports betting use case, where there is a real big problem to solve, which the biggest problem, if you talk to users, is payments, right? So Bitcoin really fits. And I think that's where we're kind of getting in. The tech piece becomes much more important, where there's an actual utility where it's hey, I'm a sportsbook operator. I don't have to deal with catchbacks and bake in 8% loss over the weekend when users put money on the platform on a Friday. So I think that is a really great point. And I think honestly, having that conversation in the Lightning space, I feel we're maturing, where it's hey, we're not just doing this because we think Bitcoin is cool and the tech is cool. We're actually bringing a very large utility in the to the world in several different ways.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm going to come back to that, actually, so I'm going to mentally put a pin in that. You did talk about Bitcoin. You talk about it as a payment. So what Evan does with Zeus is a little bit different, sort of fulfilling sort of the destiny of Bitcoin, or what it was intended to be, which is a peer-to-peer electronic cash, right? So, Evan, you've created a Lightning app that is quite dynamic. Gives users a lot of freedom as to how they use the app. If they're sort of more advanced, they can run their own node and use it. There's also a version of Zeus with the Lightning node in the phone. So if this hasn't encouraged you to download it yet, please do. Evan, can you talk a little bit about that, making it easier for people to use Bitcoin as a medium with exchange?
Yeah, what can I say? There's many different ways to use Zeus, from the person who's just getting onboarded. Maybe you can be the Uncle Jim, per se, and be their sort of Bitcoin Sherpa. You host their node and have more of like a custodial account for them as they're just getting their feet wet. From there, they could go and upgrade to like having this Lightning node in their phone with an incredibly rich list of features. And then from there, even maybe going and becoming a full node runner themselves and managing their liquidity if they so choose. But yeah, we've learned like over the years, like we shouldn't be picky about, forcing every user into the same user group. There's going to be a ton of different users comfortable with different trade-offs. As much as we want to make it easy and accessible to use Bitcoin in a private and self-sovereign manner and hold your own keys, we got to sort of accept that, it's not going to be for everyone, and it's definitely has its challenges and its frictions bringing a new user into that environment. So we like to have a lot of flexibility in our offerings too.
Appreciate that perspective. It actually brings to mind something else you wrote, Roy. Aside from being a prolific developer, Roy is also a great writer. You talked about this year, or no, you wrote this a while back, actually. We don't need necessarily more just Lightning or Bitcoin-specific apps, but we need more Lightning in just regular everyday apps that people use. So you just mentioned that, we all just mentioned that not everyone's going to come to Bitcoin for the freedom money ethos and all of this, but some people really might like the idea of maybe incorporating Lightning payments into an app that they use on a regular basis. So can you talk a little bit about how you're doing that at Breez, Roy?
Sure, but before I touch on Breez, I want to say that the title of this panel is Building on the Lightning Standard.
Yep.
The fundamental problem in building a Bitcoin startup or building a Lightning startup is that we have a go-to-market issue.
Yes.
Basically, we all love Bitcoin. We all think Bitcoin is the best form of money. But is Bitcoin solving real-world problems that people are interested in? Generally speaking, no one cares about Bitcoin. Maybe the people here in Nashville care about Bitcoin, but you step outside this arena, no one.
I'm going to say 20,000 people here, really? No, but I understand your point. Yeah.
But also the 20,000 people, how many care about the utility of Bitcoin?
Yes, that's fair.
A lot of the people care about the price of Bitcoin, and they want the price to go up, and they don't mind buying an ETF and exiting on an ETF. But for me, that's not the meaning of Bitcoin.
Yes.
Bitcoin for me is peer-to-peer electronic cash. Bitcoin for me is having control over your money, having a fixed supply, borderless, open, permissionless, censorship-resistant money. Great. But people don't care. And now we need to build a commercial company that sells product for problems that people are not interested in.
Yeah.
So we need to kind of take a step back and like what Desiree is doing, understand what's the value proposition beyond freedom money.
Yeah.
So the fact that we can have a global currency, the fact that we can have a frictionless currency that doesn't require KYC, doesn't require AML, doesn't require permission, you can move around globally at the speed of information.
Yes.
Meaning we don't have money in the speed that we have, that we can transfer information. We can't transfer value in the same manner. I think all this adds up to a very strong value proposition. And now we need to take this value proposition and see who cares.
Yep.
Find our go-to-market.
Yep.
We started off what Evan is doing, finding a go-to-market within the Bitcoin community. This is expanding to a general purpose gaming solution. And what we're trying to do, we're trying to build an infrastructure that will allow other developers to find the right go-to-market.
Yes.
Because we don't know, to be honest.
Yeah.
We know it can change the world, but we don't understand the means and the ways that it can change the world.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is to build a very simple platform where developers can use a send payment API or receive payment API, and that's it.
Yeah.
They have Bitcoin payments within their offering. And now let's see what we can build with it.
I love that. And one of the things, so I write a piece called Founders for Bitcoin Magazine on a weekly basis. And one of the things that I really walked away from when I spoke with Roy for the first time for that piece was just this idea. You think someone, as intelligent as Roy, building something on Lightning, building this SDK and allowing more people to use Lightning, would sort of know human nature enough to say, okay, this is the way that people are going to adopt Bitcoin and that's what I'm building for. But he really maintains this open mind and sort of looking at what the users are using, seeing where adoption's happening and reacting to that. I think you've done the same at Thunder, if I'm not mistaken, Des. You've sort of looked at what the users are doing, what their behavior is like, and then created something in response to that. So to come back to what you were talking about with payments, what was sort of the problem you saw or the friction that you saw that you really wanted to smooth out?
I mean, just in general, and like the general wagering gambling space, I mean, payments is just a huge headache because of traditional fiat also being a SID-based or like SID-adjacent category. There's like lots more fees and red tape that folks have to kind of walk around. Also, because of that, they've all been using Bitcoin and are very open to crypto solutions for everything. So it is a very open industry, but I think it's it's something we talk a lot about at Thunder. I'm actually interesting to see what Roy and Evan think, but there's always, we're solving a lot of problems, but also I always, as a founder, was like, Bitcoin's one of the greatest tools that we've been given. But it's also one of the biggest challenges as well, because I feel like we really solve a lot of problems, but for instance, we spend so much time on just onboarding people, teaching them how they're going to use the Lightning payments to get started. So it's sometimes is the juice worth the squeeze? So it's always this this kind of balance between when we first launched our skill-based wagering in a solitaire game. I think our wager completion rate was around 40%, which we were just having 60% drop off. And it took over 3 months to get that to 90%, which still isn't good enough for an actual commercial product, right? So and that's literally just because of we've made we've tried to make changes here and there, Roy with picture brain about a million things along the way, but it's I don't know, it's because we want to be super cypherpunk and love Bitcoin and be here for the whole ethos of Bitcoin, but then you're also kind of juggling okay, I have a fiduciary duty to a board and my investors, and I have to make revenue, and so it's constantly this balance of doing what you want to do as a mission focused company, and then also serve customers and serve the people who fund you, right? It's interesting balance.
Yeah, I have to say I don't totally envy being in that position, but I can imagine how challenging it is for sure. And I think also another dynamic that got thrown into the mix this year, especially in the wake of the Samurai hearing, is regulation, right? So not only are you serving the people who are investing in the company, and that's your founder, but now we really have to be wary of crackdowns, as we saw in the United States. For people who are not familiar with the Samurai service, it was a wallet that people could use to do something to mix their coins so that to maintain more privacy in their Bitcoin transactions. These two developers are now on trial, and there will probably be major legal precedents set moving forward over what the rules around transferring value across the internet via Lightning and Bitcoin are. Evan, you made a very bold statement on Twitter in the wake of this, where you talked about how Zeus is not going anywhere. Can you talk a little bit more about why you think it's important that we don't necessarily police ourselves, right? You haven't done anything wrong. Why did you take that stance so sort of affirmatively?
It was a sort of scary couple of weeks following the Samurai news, and then seeing some major players in the space decide to leave the U.S. market. Felt like we potentially had some very difficult decisions to make. But after thinking about it for just a little while, it wasn't such a difficult decision at all. Don't get me wrong, there's still risk and it's still scary, and we can definitely still be prosecuted potentially by this sort of DOJ, especially if a precedent gets set with the Samurai case.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the United States of America. This is my home. I love it. Where would I even be able to go to try to do this? The United States clearly believes that polices the world. So even if I set up a base somewhere else in the world, I don't think that would be any guarantee of me not being targeted. And yeah, I mean, it would be such a travesty if people just decide to pull out from the U.S. market entirely. So, you know, I think especially U.S. citizens, like I can't fault people who want to de-risk and, you know, sort of navigate the legal uncertainty by pulling out the market. But we as Americans here have to stand up and draw the line, and, you know, we're going to...
Yeah, get it down there. Yeah.
You know, I need to tip my hat to everyone else still serving the U.S. and trying to do things similar to us. I really got to tip my hat to Roy, who, you know, has provided great insight, and I've loved the way he's approached the regulatory issues that he's been facing too. And, you know, we got to just take it one day at a time and push back. And it's just incredible to see some seemingly unlikely bedfellows getting behind Bitcoin, especially at this conference. You know, personally, I didn't think we were going to have politicians aping in for another cycle or two. So to see Donald Trump talk at the Libertarian National Convention saying free roll us, protecting the right to self-custody and to mine, that's huge, and that just shifted the Overton window in itself. So, you know, I know Trump's here speaking. I'm sure his team is around. I would lobby to him. When you get back into office, which is seemingly increasingly more likely, I lobby to him to put someone in as Attorney General that would drop the charges against Samurai Wallet. So,
we appreciate that. Thank you. And well, when we spoke, you also mentioned this as well. You know, you said one of the things we really should be mindful of is not regulating ourselves when there's no reason to sort of crack down. And you said this in response to, I think, Phoenix pulling out of the U.S. So Phoenix is another Lightning wallet. Can you speak a little bit more to that? And also, just as a follow-up question, Roy, you're based in Israel. How much are you looking at the sort of regulation that comes out of the United States, and will that have an impact internationally?
Yeah, great questions. Again, let's take a step back. Why are we doing Bitcoin? We're doing Bitcoin in order to have an alternative to the US dollar.
Yes.
So if you think that the US government will comply to that, no, they're going to fight.
That's fair.
And I salute Evan, because the fight hasn't really begun. You're going to have a lot of challenges. And if people are in the Bitcoin space and they think it's going to be smooth sailing from a regulatory standpoint, okay, leave this race. Yeah. So if you don't have the balls to be in the game, you don't stand the heat in the kitchen, step out of the kitchen.
Yes.
And that's what Phoenix has done, basically. Yeah. And they diluted the value proposition of Bitcoin by doing so. Because if we perceive Bitcoin as a global peer-to-peer, open, permissionless currency, we can have U.S. citizens participate in that global currency. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is people trying to dollarize the Bitcoin. So why are we building stablecoins on Lightning? Or why are we building stablecoins on Bitcoin? In order to perpetuate the dominance of the US dollar.
Yeah.
So why are we doing that on Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Go to your Citibank or to your whatever and just use dollars. So I think, again, it's all about like first principles and what's the value proposition of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
We want to make Bitcoin a real currency, and it's going to be tough from a regulatory standpoint, but the only chance is to do that in a self-custodial fashion.
Yeah.
Because everything else...
That's right. Good round of applause. That's important.
So everything else is going to be rough. It's not an ideology. It's a pragmatic way for us to proliferate the use of Bitcoin.
100%.
So the only vehicle that stands a chance is self-custodial Bitcoin.
Yep.
And that's why I think we shouldn't self-regulate ourselves. If self-custodial Bitcoin isn't allowed information, you're not allowed to hold any information.
That's right.
Because basically you hold the key. You hold a piece of information. So what? You're not allowed to hold the key?
That's right.
That's stupid. I think it goes to freedom of property rights, and if the things will continue like that in the U.S., there's definitely going to be a Supreme Court trial on that.
Yes.
Samurai Dev is very interesting because I think they use Samurai Dev and some money laundering purposes, and they added to that the ability to they added, like they use it as a fuel to add a regulation on self-custodial Bitcoin.
What wasn't the right type of attention, I think, is what you're looking at. They were not bringing the right type of attention to what they were doing.
Exactly.
And I think the other side to what they were doing, I speak with a lot of activists who use mixing services to preserve their privacy, which can be life or death for some people. So for anyone who is looking at the Samurai Devs and saying, they sort of deserved it, they were doing this thing, you have to also realize there are people around the world who do look at this as a lifeline, as a money and a network of last resort. So to just further Roy's point, I think that's important.
Just to end on a very optimistic note,
yes,
technology, that's also why I like technology, because technology can be stopped. So no one can stop the technology, no one can stop information, they couldn't stop the internet, they won't be able to stop Bitcoin. So let's use the tools that we have in order to give people access to further money.
Yeah, beautifully put. Thank you. Yeah. Everything you just said is super, super important, but I think Des, being in a position like you are, you're a founder of a company, sure, the technology can't be stopped, but the government can make things very difficult for founders and for businesses in this space. Given what's transpired over the last few months, how has it been for you to deal with? What are you thinking?
I mean, for us, it's a little bit easier. For the end users of our products, they generally, 85% of them have never touched Bitcoin before, so they're not like, the most adamant about Bitcoin. We do get people who get very passionate. We have cash outs to Zeus, to Breez, Wallet of Satoshi, and people do get, want to go down that route rather than Zebedee or, something more custodial.
Yeah.
So we kind of have that, the flexibility to offer, a range of different offerings. I am, myself, definitely more on the self-sovereign side of things, but, seeing the users that we deal with, we have lots of brand walls who play our games, it's very hard to, argue or just get them to set up their own node. Although we do have, one brand wall who has gone down that runs an Unreal node, so, for us, it is an interesting trade-off, given the Samurai stuff. We've experimented with, with the wagering stuff, having both a non-custodial and custodial version of that. So we could continue to be operational if something does happen in the future.
Yeah.
To just make sure we have business continuity. We're operating hopefully under the assumption that, we'll all kind of agree with on this panel, and I hope that case is resolved in a positive light for Bitcoin. But we're kind of just preparing for either reality, unfortunately. But it's just a trade-off. For us, do we want to? The U.S. Tier 1 users are the most monetizable. The greatest revenue generator for us. So we just want to make sure we never have to pull out. So we are kind of, just making sure we have all optionality, which, as the cypherpunk part of me feels is really shitty and I'm selling out. But again, we are really focused on some of these really early Bitcoin consumers. So unfortunately, that's a very hard decision that I had to make a long time ago for the business.
Appreciate that. I think another hard decision, at least being behind the scenes at Bitcoin Magazine, I think we all know there's quite a large headliner this year, and there's beyond our former president being here, Trump coming to speak, we have plenty of other politicians who are here as well. Des just spoke a bit about the cypherpunk ethos, and this ethos did not say much about politicians. If anything, it was trying to sort of
The ethos of cypherpunks was cypherpunks write code. We don't pander to politicians, and we don't, beg for certain things to happen. We create technology that circumvents sort of things that get in our way. But it seems that inevitably politics have come to Bitcoin a little bit. I wasn't planning to talk about this, but I'm just curious, Evan. I know, a lot of us, I think, up here are very much purists. We really believe in Bitcoin and the power of it. But it seems that politics is coming to it. It's now a wedge issue in the United States. Just thoughts on this. How are you processing that? You need to be very careful when interfacing with these people and promises or allegiances that you may make. Let's be clear. Everything, all the pandering that's being done to us and the ass kissing is just to win votes. They want us to vote for them, and they get it out. That being said, you could be as uninterested about politics as you want, but politics is always going to be interested about you and your life and want to interject. So, there's definitely value in pushing our values and our core principles and trying to push politicians in the right direction. But don't trust them. You can only trust them as far as you can throw them, really. And, any one of these guys that are owning up to Bitcoin can easily do a 180 at any given moment. But there's a lot to still be optimistic about. Everyone that wants to come into power now is looking to devalue the dollar, some more than others, and I think we're going to see even more rampant inflation. And in terms of fiat currency, Bitcoin is going to do really well in the next few years, no matter what. But us as a Lightning founder, yes, we want a more welcoming environment. We want charges against open source software developers not to be pursued by the Department of Justice extra legally. And we got to take the good with the bad, at least. If we're going to have some people in office that are supporting Bitcoin, let them at least get rid of things like the capital gains tax here in the United States. That's what I'd love to see first and foremost. That'd be amazing. I think that would go so far in accelerating Bitcoin adoption and make more people more willing to spend it. I know many such businesses that don't want to accept it because of the burden of doing the taxes. And then, we should also push all of these politicians to free our friends like Ross Ulbricht on day one. I think that's been really nice to see. And Ross deserves to be freed, and he deserves to be with his family. So I would love to see that as well. But yeah, beyond that, just understand these people's motives and be cautious if you're interacting or dealing with them.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's definitely important to keep in mind. I do, just want to thank the panelists here. We do have to wrap this up. I do want to say, with what they're all building, if you could sort of spread the word about it, we'd always greatly appreciate it. Not necessarily in an orange pilling fashion, but just to give an idea. I was in a cab last night, and the cab driver was like, "Oh, are you another one from that Bitcoin conference or something? I want to learn about Bitcoin, blah, blah, blah." I was like, "Well, there's this, you can go to Thunder Games, you could download this game and, check it out." And I think that that's a little bit different than orange pilling in the sense that we're not sitting here, I'm not giving her a lecture on, Friedrich Hayek or Ludwig.
Yeah.
Simply saying, hey, you can go play this game and check this out. With what Breez is building, if you have a friend or maybe someone, a business associate or someone that's building an app that might benefit from having Lightning payments in it, fast, frictionless, payments that move at the speed of information, that's great. You want an amazing non-custodial wallet, you could tell your friends about Zeus. So this is, I think, to take it from orange pilling to sort of moving forward to saying, like, here are the tools that you can use to use Bitcoin. As we move into this fifth epoch, hopefully you can help us get more Lightning adoption in these ways, not sort of super aggressive ways. But we do really want to see, I think, Bitcoin start to fulfill more of its role as a medium of exchange. And I think, everyone on this stage is doing an incredible job in doing that, especially building on Lightning, which is super important. So I want to say my deep thanks to these three guests. Thank you so much to all of you for showing up this early. And we're going to leave it there. Thanks again. Enjoy the rest of the day, everybody.
Thanks, Greg.